This is the Milwaukee M18 Fuel side-by-side blower comparison. This is Gen 2, this is Gen 3, this is model 2724, this is model 3017. These are both using 5 amp hour red lithium XC batteries. Right here I want to use low RPM. Switch to turtle mode. Wide open on turtle. If I need more oomph, I can switch to rabbit. Cut out. I can hear the RPM starting to drop off. That's not me. And there, drop it. Now that's fully off on both of them. Fully dead. Substantially more time on Gen 2, 2 amp hours from full charge to full depletion at wide open throttle on both of them. Ready, set, go. shut off. Gen 2 shut off. So, in my testing, Gen 2 has substantially longer runtime and is otherwise fairly similar in performance. Weight slightly louder, slightly whinier, but not as a selling point in my book. And the form factor, it's actually smaller, which is kind of surprising. This is the Gen 2, Gen 3, Model 2724, Model 3017. They're both Milwaukee M18 Fuel Blowers. They both have 120 mile an hour blowing speed, and the Gen 2, Model 2724 is a 450 CFM airflow, and the Gen 3, Model 3017 is a 500 CFM airflow. This is slightly quieter, has cruise control, trigger. This is smaller form factor, has a 2-speed rabbit turtle and throttle lock with a variable speed as well. So they're both variable speed, they both take the same batteries. Similar. If I had a Gen 2 already, I would not upgrade to a Gen 3. If I were buying one, it depends on personal preference. If noise is a huge thing, the Gen 3 is a good option. If the very lowest RPM is important, this works well too. Slightly lower minimum RPM than this, I feel, but this has better sensitivity on the trigger in the turtle mode than this does at low. This is the Gen 2, the 2724 model. And this is the Gen 3, and this is a 3017 model. The Gen 3 unit is basically taking a chunk of the nozzle and incorporating it into the power head body, whereas Gen 2 is just a more compact power unit, and then a slightly longer flange on the nozzle. So they are completely different attachment styles. The Gen 3's main selling point is that it's a lot quieter, and it has slightly more CFM output. Miles per hour is the same, but the CFM is different. The 2724 has a 120 mile an hour and 450 CFM specs. The Gen 3 3017 model has a 120 mile an hour as well. Instead of a 450, it is a 500 CFM output on the Gen 3. So you get 50 more CFM, but the same miles per hour. So speed's the same, volume is a little bit bigger on this. Also a big difference on the Gen 3 is the noise reduction. So I can see through the grate here. It is just smooth plastic on the inside, and on the inside here, you can see gray foam. So that's gonna be noise dampening, and there's also more of that foam here. That's noise dampening, and there's no foam that I can see on the Gen 2. The controls are slightly different, which I didn't realize until I unboxed the Gen 3. They did away with the turtle rabbit high-low speed range selection, and they also did away with the trigger lock on the Gen 2. If you put full trigger, you can push that in, let go of the trigger, let go of the button, and it will hold it wide open full throttle, so you don't have to use part of your grip strength to pull the trigger or feather it if you're not needing to feather it. So you just leave it on, and it's an on-off switch, and then if you want to turn it off, you just flip the trigger, let go, and it all goes back to its idle. So they both have a variable gear, which is the reason I bought this in the first place. I want to give a side-by-side comparison for those who are going to be picking one or the other, or trying to decide if they should upgrade from the current Gen 2 to the new Gen 3, if it's worth it, if it's a better trade-off or not. Some of the features I actually prefer on the Gen 2. I do like the speed selection, so just lightly blowing dust out of a corner or cleaning off a piece of power tool or equipment, something like that. The low speed range is great for that, and what this does better, in my opinion, than the Gen 3 is it limits your trigger full range to the low speed maximum. So when you're on the turtle mode, pulling the trigger all the way only lets you go up to the maximum turtle speed. It doesn't ever go into the rabbit mode unless you specifically are in rabbit mode. I like having the the sensitivity of the turtle mode at my disposal when I need it. So I normally run this in the turtle mode and then only switch to rabbit if I don't have enough power at full trigger pull in the turtle mode. Another advantage to that is it limits your battery depletion rate. A lot of times you don't need the full power of it, and when you are working with only a full power range of motion, it's easy to start creeping towards that higher throttle range, and then your battery usage time is going to decrease faster. The Gen 3 has a really cool, unique feature. I call it the cruise control, and it is a friction slide, so it stays where you put it. And as you can see, you can slide it without pulling the trigger in both directions. That limits the lowest position that the trigger can be in. So this is completely off with the slider all the way back, so I can go 0 to 100%. But if I go, say I'm at 40 or 50%ish and it sounds good, I can pull the slide up and hold it at that position. And then if I want to increase or decrease using the slide, I can do that, and I will just hold it wherever I let off. So that's kind of the nice thing about this is you can basically create any slower speed that you want. So it's infinitely adjustable versus a 2-speed. But I feel like the range of motion that the trigger has from 0 to 100% only has that sensitivity available. You can't further refine it like the turtle mode on here. And what I noticed with that is from 0 to 30, 40, maybe 50% throttle is very fluid and feels linear. And then there's a point where it jumps fast to a higher RPM. It's not a full harsh step up. So it's not like a 400 RPM and then it jumps to 600 RPM. It still feathers to it, but it just, the trigger pull range drastically decreases for the RPM increase. And so you lose that refined control in the mid to high RPM. So I'm doing this comparison video first, and then we're going to slap batteries in them and do a side by side. Cones are different styles, so they are not interchangeable. Won't fit the length of the cones. You can see there's a couple inches difference there, but the overall length of the units with the cones is about the same. Attaching the cones is similar, but this one goes on the outside of the unit. They fully seat. This one has a release tab here, and you can slide it back off. This is similar, except this goes on the inside, and the release tab on the bottom. You rock towards the tube to release that little flapper there. You also want to make sure that you don't make the Milwaukee writing not upside down. You line up the ribs here. So just rotate until it clicks, and then pops in. Fresh off the charger, and that's it. They're ready to go. So here is the Gen 3. That's what I'm talking about with the RPM thing. So you still can feather in that range, but look how little motion that is to get that much of a difference. So you end up hearing that, but yet all this range is wasted. That's just turning on. This is the cruise control part. So with the cruise control part, that limits the bottom end of the range. You can still use the trigger beyond that. So this can be your baseline, light blowing, and then you can still feather that comes back to that. You can still have a long battery life or a battery usage time. One thing I would improve is friction here. It's not very nice. This would be nice if it were either a rolling application or just a smoother, more fluid action to it. Now this is the Gen 2, 2724. This is the Gen 3, 3017. And here's the Gen 2. So this still has some ways to trigger pull, and it has an abrupt start. That's about as low of an RPM as I can get. Versus, and that's barely even spinning. That's on turbo mode. That's very fluid though. mode. This is Gen 3. Gen 2.